So, Mike, there's a dispute now between Apple and the FBI. You know James Comey. You know the folks on all sides.
Actually, know Tim Cook too.
There you go. And so, it seems to be a dispute in some way between the national security establishment and the tech establishment. But Bill Gates has sort of said that Apple should be more cooperative, and you, one of the great national security leaders of our country, have sort of backed Apple. What's happening here?
Training Apple, yeah. Look, Mark, there's probably a constitutional question here, but I'm not a constitutional lawyer. There's clearly a privacy security balancing thing here, and I'll let wise people think about that. I just look at this in the security lane, and frankly, given the variety of threats that America faces, one needs to be careful that in dealing with this threat over here, we don't make it more difficult to deal with that threat over here. And so I think we need to be careful about what the government's asking Apple to do, because if you believe Apple and frankly a whole bunch of other technologists, even done well, dual key under lock, court order, and so on, even done well, you have actually opened up greater possibilities for degrading what would otherwise be almost unbreakable end-to-end encryption. And Jim Clapper, for the last, 2 or 3 years in his worldwide threat briefing, the Director of National Intelligence has said the number one threat facing America is the cyber threat. And so I would ask the government, frankly, being a security guy, I think the government has the right to demand this. I just don't know that it's a wise thing for the government to demand it. And now, if you want me to make, I kind of teed up the issue as to why we need to be careful. If you want me to make a judgment, my judgment is that we're probably better served by not punching any holes into a strong encryption system, even well-guarded holes.
Okay, so, but this is a challenge that we have in the high-tech world. So, for example, if I have a home, I can lock the door to my house. I can put the most high-tech security system into my home. But when the government comes with a lawful warrant and says that you have to let us in, I have to let you in. I have to disable the system and all the rest. And if I had, basically what it sounds like is the tech companies are building technology that will blow up my home if you try and come in.
Yeah, but actually in this case, you're asking the tech companies to build a key that opens 320 million houses.
Interesting. So,
and that's really the deal. Look, when this all began, Mark, I said, I know this is bad. I'm not sure if this leads to that. But the longer I've thought about it, I'm trending that, this does lead to that. And the metaphor you raised is actually the right one, that this key isn't just to my house. This key opens everybody's house.
So does the national security establishment, we know how important getting content has been for national security. Is content going to be out of our reach from now on?
Content will be more out of our reach no matter what we do in this case. This is just an inevitable advance of technology. By the way, you play this out 2 and 3 moves down the board, right? We could have a really bad outcome. What if you compel U.S. companies to do this, and we drive the highest end encryption on the planet offshore? I mean, if you look, Apple's actually been cooperative in all of the other things with regard to the phone. All of what I call the digital exhaust that these folks have been putting out, that was available to Apple, and they shared it with the government. It was available to them because they used an Apple product. All right, they were in the Apple system. Now, if we make Apple do this and offshore companies don't, we will drive the international market to the offshore companies, and we will now not only not get content, we won't get digital exhaust either. And my point is, there's a lot of digital exhaust out there. Mike McConnell, one of my predecessors at NSA, actually lived through this movie. It was called Clipper Chip. And Mike wanted to bake in the back door actually into the silicon. And the Clinton administration would have none of it. And Mike then tells the tale. Thus began the greatest 15 years in the history of electronic surveillance.
Wow. Because
everyone going to digital devices created this ocean of data, much of it meta as opposed to content. But with metadata, you can do an awful lot. So, sorry, to specifically answer your question, under any circumstances, we're going to get less content. It doesn't mean we're going to get less intelligence.